The Chicago winter bit through Michaela Turner's thin coat as she trudged toward the towering glass structure of the Blackstone Grand Hotel. The night shift was about to begin, and being late wasn't an option, not when you were already on thin ice with management. "Hey, Kay," Jerry, the security guard, called out as she hurried through the staff entrance. His friendly smile was one of the few bright spots in her long nights of scrubbing bathrooms and changing sheets for people who spent more on a single night's stay than she made in a month. "Hey, Jerry, how's Donna's back doing?" Kay asked, unwrapping her scarf as the blessed heat of the building enveloped her. "Better, thanks to that tea you suggested. You're an angel, you know that." Kay forced a smile. Angel was the last thing she felt like these days. Just passing along what my mama taught me. The mention of her mother sent a familiar ache through her chest. 6 months gone, and sometimes Kay still reached for her phone to call her, only to remember all over again. In the employee locker room, Kay changed quickly into her uniform, a plain grey dress with the hotel logo embroidered on the pocket. The other night cleaners nodded in greeting as they gathered their supplies. "Turner," the sharp voice of Mrs. Hodges, the head of housekeeping, cut through the chatter. "You're on the executive floor tonight. Mr. Blackstone himself is in the penthouse and his assistant specifically requested you." Kay's eyes widened. "Me? Why?" "Said you did a good job last time. Don't ask questions, just be grateful for the opportunity. And remember, those rooms need to be perfect. Mr. Blackstone doesn't tolerate mistakes." Kay nodded, hiding her confusion. She'd never cleaned the penthouse before, but the executive floor meant better tips sometimes. She needed every extra dollar she could get. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her brother Darnell. "Need $60 for school trip tomorrow. Sorry." "Love you." Kay closed her eyes briefly. Between rent on her cousin Tasha's couch, the medical bills from her mother's illness, and keeping Darnell in decent clothes for school, her last paycheck had vanished before it even hit her account. But she couldn't let her brother down. Not when school was the only thing keeping him from falling in with the wrong crowd. "I'll figure it out," she texted back. She always did, somehow. The executive floor was eerily quiet as Kay pushed her cleaning cart out of the service elevator. Crystal. Chandeliers cast soft light on plush carpets that probably cost more than her entire life. She moved silently, as she'd been trained to do, invisible, efficient, like a ghost passing through the lives of the wealthy. As she approached the penthouse, a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out of the shadows. "Miss Turner?" His voice was clipped professional. Kay jumped slightly. "Yes, I'm David Hayes, Mr. Blackstone's personal assistant." He extended a hand with perfectly manicured nails. "I'll need you to sign this non-disclosure agreement before entering the penthouse." Kay frowned at the document he held out. "I already signed an NDA when I was hired. This one is specific to Mr. Blackstone's quarters. Standard procedure. Nothing about this felt standard, but Kay couldn't afford to make waves. She quickly scanned the document, mostly legal jargon about not discussing anything she saw or heard inside, and signed. "Perfect." Hayes tucked the paper into his leather portfolio. "Mr. Blackstone is out for the evening. You have approximately 3 hours to complete your work. The penthouse has some special requirements." The way he said "special requirements" made Kay's skin prickle, but she just nodded and followed as he unlocked the double doors. The penthouse was unlike anything Kay had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago's glittering skyline. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black created a sleek, cold atmosphere. Not a home, she thought, a statement. "The main areas need standard cleaning," Hayes instructed, walking briskly through the space. "In the master bedroom, change. The sheets, black ones only, they're in the closet. The bathroom requires special attention. Mr. Blackstone is particular." "I'll make sure everything's perfect," Kay assured him, already mentally calculating how to fit all this into 3 hours. "One more thing." Hayes paused, studying her with calculating eyes. "Mr. Blackstone has a proposal for you, a personal matter. He'll speak with you directly when he returns if you're willing to stay." Kay's guard immediately went up. "What kind of proposal?" "That's for him to discuss. I can only tell you it would be financially significant." A cold knot formed in Kay's stomach. She knew what rich men sometimes expected from women like her, women without options. "I'm just here to clean, Mr. Hayes." Of course. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'll leave you to your work. Remember, 3 hours." When the door closed behind him, Kay leaned against her cart, heart racing. Everything inside her screamed to leave now. But she needed this job, and maybe, just maybe, whatever proposal. This Blackstone person wasn't what she feared. She began cleaning methodically, working her way through the living areas. Everything was immaculate already, barely lived in. In the kitchen, a single coffee cup in the sink was the only evidence someone actually used the space. The master bedroom was different. The massive bed was rumpled, pillows scattered on the floor as if someone had fought their demons all night. On the nightstand, an orange pill bottle caught her eye. Prescription sleep medication. Next to it, a framed photo lay face down. Against her better judgment, Kay picked it up. A much younger version of a handsome, dark-haired man stood beside an older couple. His parents, maybe. They were smiling, but the boy's eyes held something Kay recognized: loneliness. She quickly set the photo down. The personal belongings of the ultra-wealthy weren't her business. She changed the sheets with practiced efficiency, noting how the black silk felt against her work-roughened hands. In the bathroom, she understood what Hayes meant by special attention. The enormous marble shower had complex settings. The vanity was stocked with expensive products that needed to be arranged just so, and even the towels had to be folded in a specific way. By the time she finished, her back ached from bending and scrubbing. She checked her watch. 30 minutes to spare. Enough time to leave before this mysterious Mr. Blackstone returned. But as she pushed her cart toward the door, it swung open. The man who entered moved with the quiet confidence of someone who owned not just the room, but the entire building, possibly the whole city. Tall, with broad shoulders and sharp features, he wore a black suit that probably cost more than Kay's yearly salary. His dark hair was perfectly styled, but his jaw was tense, his eyes a striking blue, cold and assessing. Julian Blackstone. Kay had seen his picture in the papers. Chicago's youngest billionaire, the ruthless CEO who bought failing companies and turned them around through methods that earned him the nickname the Silence Broker. He never gave interviews, never attended galas, never showed emotion in public. "You're still here." His voice was deep, with an edge like expensive whiskey. Kay straightened her shoulders. "I was just leaving, Mr. Blackstone." "Did Hayes tell you?" "I wanted to speak with you." "He mentioned a proposal." Kay kept her voice neutral, professional. Julian Blackstone studied her face for a long moment. Then he walked to the bar against the wall and poured himself a drink. "Would you like one?" "No, thank you. I don't drink on the job." A slight smile curved his lips. "Responsible, that's good." He gestured to one of the sleek chairs. "Please sit." Kay remained standing. "I prefer to hear what this is about, sir." He nodded as if her defiance confirmed something for him. "I've noticed your work. Thorough, discreet. You don't gossip with the other staff." How would he know that? Had he been watching her? "Mrs. Hodges mentioned your situation," he continued. "Single guardian for your brother. Medical debts. Working. 2 jobs and barely staying afloat." Heat flushed Kay's face. "My personal life isn't hotel business." "No, it's not." He set his glass down. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Turner. A single night of your time, well compensated. $100,000. The amount hit Kay like a physical blow. $100,000, enough to pay off her mother's medical bills, enough for a real apartment for her and Darnell, enough to breathe. "What exactly would this night entail?" she asked, her voice tight. "Nothing illegal. Nothing that would harm you." His eyes never left hers. "You would come to a location of my choosing. Spend the night. No names, no talking. Just presence." "You mean sex?" Kay's voice was flat. "I mean companionship on my terms." His expression remained unreadable. "You can say no, your job won't be affected. This conversation never happened." A bitter laugh escaped her. "That simple?" "Yes." Kay looked around the penthouse, at the wealth, the power, the emptiness. Then she thought of Darnell's text message, of her mother's grave, still without a proper headstone. of the eviction notice Tasha had hinted was coming if Kay couldn't contribute more to the rent. "Why me?" she asked finally. Something flickered in those blue eyes, something almost human. "Because you have sad eyes but a straight spine, because you leave no trace of yourself in the rooms you clean, yet somehow make them feel more alive." The answer was so unexpected that Kay found herself speechless. "Take 24 hours to consider," Julian said, reaching into his jacket. He handed her a business card with only a phone number embossed in silver. "If you agree, call this number. Tomorrow night, if I don't hear from you, we never had this conversation." Kay took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. "And if I say yes, what guarantee do I have? You'll be paid half before, half after. And you have my word. For whatever. That's worth to you. The word of a billionaire who bought silence for a living." Kay wasn't sure what that was worth at all. 24 hours, she repeated, tucking the card into her pocket. Julian Blackstone nodded once, then turned away, dismissing her as easily as he'd summoned her. "Good night, Miss Turner." "Good night, Mr. Blackstone." Kay pushed her cart out, the door her mind spinning, the weight of $100,000 pressing against her heart. "Girl, you look like you've seen a ghost." Tasha handed Kay a mug of cheap coffee as dawnlight filtered through the apartment's thin curtains. "That hotel working you to death?" Kay sank onto the pull-out couch that served as her bed, still in her uniform. After leaving the Blackstone Grand, she'd gone straight to her second job at the all-night diner, serving truckers and third-shift workers until 6 a.m. Her body ached, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. "Just tired," she murmured, sipping the coffee gratefully. "Darnell up yet?" "Boy's in the shower. Got that field trip today." Tasha hesitated. "He mentioned needing money. I got it covered." Kay pulled 320s from her tip money, tips she'd been saving toward a security deposit on an apartment. "Can you give it to him? I need to sleep before my shift tonight." Tasha took the money, her expression softening. "You're killing yourself, Kay. When's the last time you did anything but work and worry?" Since before Mama got sick, Kay thought. But she just shrugged. "I'm fine." "You ain't fine, but you're stubborn as hell, just like your mama." Tasha squeezed her shoulder. "I gotta get to work. There's leftover chicken in the fridge." When Tasha left, Kay pulled Julian Blackstone's card from her pocket. The silver number seemed to shimmer in the morning light. $100,000 for one night. She'd never been the type of woman who thought she could trade on her looks. Growing up, she'd been the smart one, the responsible one, the one who helped her mother clean houses on weekends to make extra money, the one who made. Sure, Darnell did his homework while their mother worked double shifts. Now, with her mother gone, Kay was all Darnell had. And she was failing him, living on a cousin's couch, working herself to exhaustion, barely keeping their heads above water. One night, one decision, one chance to change everything. Kay closed her eyes, the card still between her fingers. She couldn't believe she was even considering it, but she was. That evening, Kay sat on a bench in the small park near Tasha's apartment, the business card in her hand, her phone in the other. 23 hours had passed. In one more, the offer would expire. Part of her hoped for a sign, something to make the decision for her, but the universe remained stubbornly silent, offering neither permission nor condemnation. Kay thought about what her mother would say. Mavis Turner had been fierce about her children's dignity, even when they had nothing else. "Hold your head high," she'd always said. "Your worth isn't in your wallet." But Mavis had also been practical. When the electricity was about to be cut off one winter, she'd swallowed her pride and cleaned the house of a man who'd once called her a degrading name. Because Darnell needed his inhaler, and the medicine had to be refrigerated. "Sometimes you do what you have to do," she told Kay that night, "but you never let it change who you are inside." Could Kay do this one thing, this one night, and still be herself in the morning? She didn't know. But as the park lights flickered, on against the gathering dusk, she dialed the number. It rang only once before a man answered. Not Julian Blackstone, but someone with the same clipped efficiency as Hayes. "You've decided," the voice stated. "Yes," Kay said, her heart pounding. "A car will pick you up in 1 hour, 8:15 p.m. Text this number with your location. Bring nothing but yourself. The line went dead. 1 hour. Kay hurried back to Tasha's apartment. Grateful that both Tasha and Darnell were out for the evening, Tasha at her boyfriend's, Darnell at a friend's house for a study group. She showered quickly, then stood before the small closet where she kept her meager wardrobe. What did you wear to something like this? She settled on the only dress she owned that wasn't for work or church, a simple black one she'd bought for a job interview last year. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and fit her well. She applied a touch of mascara and lip gloss, then pulled her long braids back into a neat bun. In the mirror, a stranger looked back at her, a woman about to cross a line she'd never thought she would. Just one night, she whispered to her reflection. Just one. At exactly 8 p.m., Kay texted her location. 15 minutes later, a sleek black car with tinted windows pulled up to the curb. The driver, a stone-faced woman in a suit, opened the door without a word. Kay slid into the back seat, her palms damp, her breathing shallow, as the car pulled. Away! The driver pressed a button, and a privacy screen rose between them. On the seat beside Kay was an envelope and a black silk sleep mask. She opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a check for $50,000, made out to Michaela Turner, and a handwritten note. The mask is for the journey. You'll be able to see once we arrive. You can still change your mind. Kay stared at the check, reality crashing over her. This was happening. She was really doing this. Slowly, she put on the mask. The world went dark, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the quiet hum of the luxury car beneath her. The journey took perhaps 30 minutes, though Kay lost all sense of time in the darkness. She felt the car slow, turn several times, then come to a stop. The door opened and someone helped her out, a man's hand, firm but not rough. This way, a voice murmured, not Blackstone's. She was guided a short distance, then heard the sound of an elevator. Up they went, her stomach dropping, with the swift ascent. When the doors opened, the sounds changed. The space felt larger, the air different. You can remove the mask now. Kay lifted the silk from her eyes, blinking as they adjusted. She stood in a dimly lit foyer of what appeared to be a private residence, modern, luxurious, but warmer than Blackstone's penthouse. The man who had guided her, another suit-wearing assistant type, gestured toward a door. Through there, everything has been prepared. Where are we? Kay asked, finding her voice. That's not relevant to your agreement. His tone was polite but firm. Mr. Smith will join you shortly. Mr. Smith, a false name for a night without identities. When the man left, Kay stood frozen for a moment, fighting the urge to run. But the check in her purse anchored her to this decision. She'd come this far. She walked through the indicated door into a spacious living room with a wall of windows overlooking the city. Chicago spread out before her, a carpet of lights in the darkness. It could have been beautiful if she wasn't so terrified. Would you like a drink? She turned sharply. Julian Blackstone stood in the doorway to what appeared to be a kitchen. He'd changed from the business suit into black pants and a simple grey shirt that somehow made him look more imposing, not less. No, Kay said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'd like to know exactly what you expect from me tonight. He moved into the room, his movements controlled, deliberate. I expect you to stay until morning. I expect no questions about who I am or what I do. Beyond that, his eyes met hers. I expect you to tell me if I do anything that makes you uncomfortable. That's it. That's it. Kay didn't believe him. Men like Julian Blackstone didn't pay $100,000 for nothing. Why the pretense? Why not just say what you want? Something flickered in his expression, frustration perhaps. Because what I want isn't easily put into words. He gestured to the couch. Please sit. I won't come closer until you're comfortable. Kay perched on the edge of the couch, her body tense. Julian remained standing, watching her with those penetrating blue eyes. Do you know what I do, Miss Turner? He asked suddenly. You buy companies, turn them around. A slight nod. Do you know how? Kay shook her head. I buy silence. He spoke matter-of-factly. I find the secrets that are destroying a company from within. The embezzlement, the harassment, the cover-ups, I make them go away. legally, but quietly. People, pay me for discretion as much as results. Why are you telling me this? Because my life is built on silence. His voice dropped lower, and sometimes the silence becomes deafening. Kay didn't know what to say to that. This wasn't what she'd expected, this strange, stilted conversation. Julian moved toward the window, his back to her. I haven't slept properly in 2 years. Doctors, medication, exercise, nothing helps. But last month I was at a hotel in New York. A cleaner came in while I was half asleep on the couch. She didn't see me. She hummed while she worked, some old song. For the first time in months I slept through the night. Kay's confusion deepened. So, you want me to clean? To hum? He turned back to her, and for an instant she saw naked vulnerability in his face before the mask of control slipped back into place. I want not to be alone with my thoughts, just for one night. There are therapists for that, Kay said. Friends, dating apps. People who want something from Julian Blackstone. Access, money, power. His jaw tightened. You don't even know who I am, supposedly. That's what I'm paying for. This was getting stranger by the minute. Kay stood up, needing to move, to think. So we just... What? Sit here all night? Watch TV? Play Monopoly? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. If that's what you prefer. What I prefer is to understand what's really happening here. Julian sighed. Then walked to a nearby table. He poured himself a drink, his movements precise. What's happening is that I'm a man who has everything except peace, and you're a woman who needs money, but won't compromise her dignity to get it. He looked at her over the rim of his glass. I thought perhaps we could help each other. The sincerity in his voice caught Kay off guard. For the first time she considered that maybe, just maybe, this night wasn't what she'd feared. I still don't understand what you want from me, she said softly. Julian set his glass down and walked toward her slowly, stopping a few feet away. May I show you? Kay hesitated, then nodded once. He closed the distance between them, and gently, so gently it made her breath catch, took her hand. His fingers were warm, slightly calloused despite his wealth. He led her to the couch and sat down, drawing her down beside him. Just this, he said quietly. Just presence. And then he simply held her hand in silence, looking out at the city. Lights, no demands, no expectations. Just the strange, unexpected comfort of human contact without words. Minutes passed. Kay's pulse gradually slowed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. This man, this billionaire who bought and sold companies like trading cards, just wanted to sit quietly holding a stranger's hand. It made no sense. And yet, as the silence stretched between them, Kay began to understand. In the quiet, there, were no roles to play, no expectations to meet. Just two people existing in the same space, carrying their separate burdens. You can turn on the TV if you want, Julian said eventually, his voice low, or we can talk about nothing important. Whatever makes this easier for you. Kay studied his profile in the dim light, the hard lines of his face, the carefully controlled expression. She recognized the loneliness now, the same emptiness she'd seen in the photo by his bed. Why me? She asked again. Julian's thumb moved slowly across her knuckles, a barely there caress. Because when you thought no one was looking, I saw you. Leave a flower from the hotel arrangement by a sick child's door. Because you talked to Mrs. Chen in 714 when she was crying, even though you could have lost your job for staying too long. Because you walk like someone who's carrying the weight of the world, but refuses to be crushed by it. He'd been watching her. All this time, this powerful man had been seeing her when she thought she was invisible. I don't know what to say to. That, Kay admitted. You don't have to say anything. Julian's eyes met hers, and for a moment the mask slipped again. That's the point. They sat in silence again, but it was different now, charged with something Kay couldn't name. Not desire. Exactly, something more fragile. After a while, Julian stood and walked to the kitchen. He returned with 2 mugs of tea, offering one to Kay. She accepted it, wrapping her hands around the warmth. Tell me about your brother, Julian said as he sat down again, slightly closer than before. Kay blinked in surprise. "I thought you didn't want to know about me." "I said no questions about who I am. I didn't say I wasn't curious about you." She sipped the tea, some exotic blend that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "Darnell is 16, smart as a whip but trying hard not to show it these days. Since our mom died," she swallowed. "It's been tough. He's angry at the world." Julian nodded. "I understand that kind of anger." Something in his tone made Kay look at him more closely. "Did you lose someone too?" A shadow passed over his face. "My parents, I was 12, car accident. I'm sorry." Kay's heart twisted with unexpected sympathy. It was a long time ago. His voice was neutral, but his eyes told a different story. The conversation drifted after, that careful, circling around personal details while revealing just enough to keep the silence from becoming uncomfortable. Julian asked about her work, her cousin Tasha, her favorite places in Chicago. Kay found herself answering, drawn in by his genuine interest. Hours passed. They moved from tea to a late dinner that Julian ordered delivered, food from a small Ethiopian restaurant Kay had mentioned in passing. They ate with their hands, the intimacy of the shared meal breaking down more barriers between them. As midnight approached, Kay felt herself growing tired, the exhaustion of her double shifts catching up to her. Julian noticed, of course. He seemed to notice everything. "You should rest," he said, clearing away their plates. "There's a bedroom through there." He nodded toward a hallway. "I'll take the couch." Kay frowned. "That wasn't the deal. The deal was that you stay until morning." His eyes held hers. Nothing more was specified. "So you really did just want company?" Something flickered across his face, desire, quickly controlled. "What I want and what I expect are different." "Things, Miss Turner." The formal address jarred after hours of careful conversation, a reminder of the transaction between them. Kay stood suddenly uncertain. "Where's the bathroom?" "First door on the right." In the bathroom, marble and glass like everything in Julian Blackstone's world, Kay stared at her reflection. Her hair was still neatly pulled back, but her eyes looked different, softer somehow, more confused. This night was nothing like what she'd expected. The man waiting outside that door was nothing like what she'd expected. When she emerged, Julian was standing by the window again, his posture rigid. He turned as she approached, his expression unreadable. "You can have the bedroom," he repeated. "I rarely sleep anyway." Kay studied him in the dim light, this powerful man who bought silence, who couldn't sleep, who watched her when no one else did, who paid $100,000 for the simple comfort of not being alone. "The bed is probably big enough for both of us," she said quietly, "if you just want to sleep." Julian went very still. "Are you sure?" No, Kay thought. She wasn't sure of anything anymore. But she nodded. He led her to the bedroom, a spacious room with another wall of windows and a massive bed with crisp white sheets. On a chair lay a neatly folded t-shirt and pair of soft cotton shorts. "For you to sleep in," Julian explained. "I'll wait outside while you change." When he'd gone, Kay changed quickly, breathing in the clean cotton scent of the borrowed clothes. The t-shirt hung loose on her frame, the shorts cinched tight at the waist. She sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly nervous again. "You can come in," she called softly. Julian entered, now wearing sweatpants and a different t-shirt. In this more casual attire, he looked almost normal, still intimidatingly handsome, but less like the billionaire CEO and more like a man. He hesitated, then moved to the far side of the bed. "I can stay on top of the covers." "It's fine," Kay said, slipping under the sheets. "Just sleep." Julian turned off the light, leaving only the glow of the city through the windows. The bed dipped as he lay down beside her, careful to maintain distance between them. For several minutes they lay in silence, both staring up at the ceiling. Then Julian spoke, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. "Thank you," he said simply. Kay turned her head to look at him, his profile illuminated by the soft city light. "For what?" "For seeing me as a person, not just a transaction." The words hit Kay with unexpected force. Wasn't that exactly what she'd wanted too? To be seen as more than a maid, more than a struggling single guardian, more than a woman desperate enough to accept this strange arrangement. She reached across the space between them and found his hand. His fingers immediately intertwined with hers, warm and steady. "Good night, Mr. Smith," she whispered. A soft exhale, almost a laugh. "Good night, Miss Turner." In the darkness, holding the hand of a man whose real name she wasn't supposed to know, Kay felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The weight of her responsibilities, her fears, her constant struggle to stay afloat, all of it seemed lighter somehow. Just for tonight, she wasn't alone in carrying her burdens. Just for tonight, she could breathe. As she drifted toward sleep, she felt Julian shift beside her, moving closer, his body radiating warmth. His breath evened out, his hand still holding hers. And in that quiet moment before consciousness slipped away, Kay realized that something had happened that neither of them had anticipated. In this strange night of shadows and silence, they had somehow found something genuine, something that $50,000 couldn't buy. Kay woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar softness of the mattress beneath her, so different from Tasha's lumpy pull-out couch. Then the memories of the previous night rushed back. The deal, the car ride, Julian Blackstone. She turned her head, but the other side of the bed was empty, the sheets cool to the touch. Had he left? She sat up, noticing a folded piece of paper on the nightstand beside a steaming cup of coffee. "I had an early meeting. Breakfast is in the kitchen. The second payment has been arranged. The car will take you wherever you'd like when you're ready." Jay formal, businesslike. As if last night had been nothing more than the transaction they'd agreed upon. Kay didn't know why that stung, but it did. She sipped the coffee, perfectly prepared as if someone had been watching how she took it at the hotel, and tried to sort through her conflicted feelings. She'd done what she came here to do. She'd earned the money her family desperately needed. She should feel relieved, not disappointed. After a quick shower in the luxurious bathroom, Kay found her black dress neatly folded on a chair. Next to it was a shopping bag containing brand new clothes, simple jeans, a soft blue sweater, and even underwear, all in her exact size. The presumption irritated her, but the thought of putting her dress back on after sleeping in it didn't appeal either. The new clothes fit perfectly, of course they did. Julian Blackstone seemed to notice everything about her. In the kitchen, she found an array of breakfast foods, keeping warm under silver covers, enough to feed 5 people. Kay hadn't had a proper breakfast in months, usually grabbing coffee, and maybe a piece of toast between shifts. She filled a plate with eggs, bacon, and fresh fruit, then sat at the island counter to eat. As she chewed, her eyes wandered to the envelope propped against a flower vase. Her name was written across it in bold handwriting. Inside, she found another check, this one for $50,000, the second half of their agreement. Underneath was a business card with Julian's personal phone number handwritten on the back. Kay stared at it, unsure what it meant. An invitation? A courtesy? Or just another power move from a man used to getting what he wanted? She slipped the card into her pocket, then called the number Julian had given her the day before. The same efficient voice answered, and within minutes, the same black car was waiting for her downstairs. As the car pulled away from the building, an unmarked high-rise in a part of Chicago Kay rarely visited, she felt as if she were leaving a dream behind. Last night seemed unreal in the harsh light of morning. The gentle conversation, the hand-holding, falling asleep beside a billionaire who'd paid for her silence but seemed to value her voice. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked, interrupting her thoughts. Kay almost gave Tasha's address, then stopped herself. With the money in her purse, she didn't have to go back to that pull-out couch. She could start fresh. "Chicago Trust Bank on Madison, please," she said instead. At the bank, Kay opened a new account, depositing both checks with hands that trembled slightly. The banker's eyebrows rose when he saw the amounts, but Kay offered no explanation. Let him think what he wanted. She walked out with a debit card and a sense of unreality, $100,000, in her name. Her next stop was a real estate office she'd passed many times, but never dared enter. 3 hours later, She walked out with a lease on a modest two-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood, first and last month's rent, and security deposit paid in advance. The property manager had been skeptical until Kay showed her bank statement. Money, it seemed, erased many questions. By late afternoon, Kay sat on the floor of her new, empty apartment, her few possessions in garbage bags beside her. She'd texted Tasha that she'd found a place and would pick up Darnell from school. She hadn't explained how this miracle had happened. She wasn't sure she could. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I hoped the arrangements were satisfactory. JK stared at the message. Arrangements. Such a cold word for what had passed between them. She started to type several responses, deleting each one. Finally, she settled on, "Thank you for the opportunity to start over." The reply came almost instantly. "You earned it." Did she, though? Kay looked around the empty apartment. What exactly had she done to earn $100,000? Slept, just slept, in a bed next to a lonely man. Talked about nothing important. Held his hand. It didn't add up. Men like Julian Blackstone didn't pay that kind of money for so little. There had to be more to it. But there was no time to dwell on it now. She had to pick up Darnell from school and figure out how to explain their sudden change in fortune. "You did what?" Darnell's eyes were wide as Kay drove them to their new apartment in the used car she'd bought that afternoon. Another surreal purchase. "Some rich dude just gave you money. Why? What did you have to do?" Kay gripped the steering wheel tighter. It wasn't like that. It was a job opportunity. The one-time thing. Darnell's face darkened. "What kind of job pays that much for one night? You think I'm stupid?" "Watch your tone," Kay snapped, then immediately regretted it. Darnell had a right to be suspicious. Anyone would be. "Look, I know how it sounds, but it wasn't anything bad, I promise." "Then why won't you tell me what you did?" Kay sighed, turning onto their new street. "Because it's complicated and private." She parked in front of the small apartment building. "This is it, our new place." Darnell looked out the window, his expression softening slightly at the sight of the well-maintained building with its small front garden. It wasn't fancy, but it was worlds better than Tasha's cramped apartment in a neighborhood where gunshots were a regular occurrence. "Does it have my own room?" he asked, his voice smaller. "Yes." "And a real bed? Not a couch or an air mattress?" Darnell was quiet as they carried their meager belongings up to the apartment. When Kay unlocked the door, he stepped inside and just stood there, looking around at the empty rooms, the clean walls, the sunlight streaming through windows that weren't covered in security bars. "It's nice," he finally said. Then more quietly, "Mom would have liked it." Kay's throat tightened. "Yeah, she would have." Darnell turned to her, his young face serious beyond his years. "I don't care what you had to do to get this. I'm just glad we're out of Tasha's." The simple statement nearly broke Kay's heart. Her brother had been carrying his own burden of worry all this time, pretending not to notice their dire circumstances for her sake. "We're going to be okay now," she promised, pulling him into a hug that he endured with typical teenage reluctance. Things are going to get better. But even as she said it, Kay wondered if that was true. The money would change their circumstances, yes, but at what cost to her sense of self? 3 days later, Kay stood at the employee entrance of the Blackstone Grand Hotel, her stomach in knots. She hadn't been back since the night Julian made his proposition. She'd called in sick for her shifts, using the time to set up their new apartment and enroll Darnell in the better school in their new district. But she couldn't avoid this place forever. She needed the job. The money from Julian wouldn't last. Forever. And she still had her mother's medical bills to pay off. Besides, running away felt like admitting she'd done something wrong. "There she is." Jerry, the security guard, grinned as she approached. "Thought you might have won the lottery and quit on us." Kay forced a smile. "Just a stomach bug. I'm better now." "Good to hear." "Hey, Mrs. Hodges was looking for you earlier. Said to send you straight to her office when you got in." Kay's heart sank. Had Julian said something to get her fired? Had someone seen her getting into that black car? She made her way to the small office where Mrs. Hodges ruled over the housekeeping. Department with an iron fist. The older woman looked up from her computer as Kay knocked on the open door. Turner, finally decided to grace us with your presence? I'm sorry for calling in sick, Mrs. Hodges. It won't happen again. Mrs. Hodges studied her for a long moment. You're working the executive floor again tonight. Mr. Blackstone specifically requested you. Kay felt the blood drain from her face. He's back? Arrived this morning. And he's made it clear he wants you handling his suite. Mrs. Hodges leaned forward. Whatever you did last time, he was impressed. This could be good for all of us, Turner. Don't mess it up. Kay nodded mechanically and left the office, her mind racing. Why would Julian request her again? Their arrangement was over. He'd paid her. They were done. Unless he wanted more. Another night. Another payment. The thought should have repulsed her. Instead, it sent a confusing mix of emotions through her. Anxiety, yes, but also a flicker of something else. Something she didn't want to examine too closely. Her shift passed in a blur of cleaning tasks, her body on autopilot, while her mind spiraled with scenarios of what might happen when she reached the penthouse. Would he be there? Would he act like a stranger again? Would he offer her more money, and if he did, would she accept? By the time she pushed her cart out of the service elevator onto the executive floor, Kay's nerves were stretched to breaking point. She moved through her regular rooms first, delaying the inevitable. Finally, as her shift neared its end, she approached the penthouse. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly on the door. No answer. She used her master key to enter, half hoping Julian wouldn't be there. The main room was empty, the lights dimmed. Kay began her cleaning routine, ears straining for any sound of movement from the other rooms. She was changing the sheets on the massive bed when she heard the main door open and close. Her hands froze on the black silk. Miss Turner. Julian's voice. Closer than she expected. Kay turned to find him standing in the bedroom doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the light from the living room. He wore another impeccable suit, but his tie was loosened, his collar unbuttoned, small signs of the long day behind him. Mr. Blackstone, she acknowledged, her voice steadier than she felt. He stepped into the room, his blue eyes moving over her face as if searching for something. How are you? Such a simple question, yet Kay found herself at a loss for how to answer it. How was she? Confused, conflicted, changed in ways she was still trying to understand. I'm fine, she said finally. The new apartment is nice. A small smile touched his lips. I'm glad to hear it. He moved further into the room, maintaining a careful distance between them. And your brother? Adjusting. He likes having his own room. Julian nodded, his expression softening. Children are resilient. An awkward silence fell between them. Kay resumed making the bed, hyper-aware of Julian watching her. This was ridiculous. She was acting like a nervous teenager, not a grown woman, who had spent a night in this man's arms, even if all they'd done was sleep. Why did you request me? She asked finally, straightening the last corner of the sheet with more force than necessary. Julian didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline turning golden in the setting sun. I slept, he said simply. The whole night. First time in years. Kay stilled, absorbing this. So, what? You want to make another arrangement? Turned back to her, his expression guarded. Would that be so terrible? I don't know. Kay stepped away from the bed, needing distance. This is already complicated enough. What's complicated about it? You provided a service, I compensated you fairly. The clinical description stung more than it should have. Is that all it was to you? A service? Something flickered in Julian's eyes, frustration perhaps, or regret. What else could it be, Miss Turner? We barely know each other. We spent a night together, Kay countered. Talking, sharing a bed. That's more than just a service. Julian's jaw tightened. I apologize. If I gave you the impression that it was anything more, that wasn't my intention. The dismissal hit Kay like a physical blow. She'd been right the first time. This was just a transaction to him. The connection she'd felt, the gentle conversations, the hand-holding in the dark, none of it had been real, I see. She picked up her cleaning supplies, desperate now to escape this room, this man, her own foolish feelings. I'll finish the bathroom and be out of your way. Kay, the use of her first name stopped her at the doorway. She turned back, unable to help herself. Julian stood very still, conflict written across his face. I didn't mean to offend you. This is unfamiliar territory for me. What is? Wanting to see someone again. Not for business. Not for any logical reason. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty from a man who exuded control. I don't know how to do this. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and unexpectedly vulnerable. Kay felt something shift in her chest, anger giving way to a dangerous tenderness. Do what exactly? She asked, her voice softer. Julian took a step toward her, then stopped himself. Ask you to have dinner with me, like a normal person would. All the things Kay had expected him to say, this wasn't on the list. Dinner? Yes. At a restaurant. In public. A hint of his usual confidence returned in the slight curve of his lips. I believe that's the customary way people get to know each other. Kay stared at him, trying to process this turn of events. You want to date me, after paying me to spend the night with you? Julian winced slightly at her blunt phrasing. I want to start over. Properly this time. Why? Because I haven't stopped thinking about you. The simple honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Because that night wasn't just a transaction for me, no matter what I just said. And I hope, it wasn't just about the money for you either. Kay set down her cleaning supplies, buying time to organize her thoughts. This powerful, enigmatic man who could have anyone he wanted was standing in front of her, looking almost uncertain, asking her to dinner. It was surreal. And dangerous. And tempting in a way she hadn't expected. People will talk, she said finally. The hotel maid and the billionaire CEO, it's like a bad movie. Let them talk. Julian's eyes held hers. I've never cared much for other people's opinions. Easy for you to say, you're not the one they'll call a gold digger. You're right, he acknowledged with a nod. It would be harder for you. That's why I'll understand if you say no. Kay studied his face. The sharp angles, the careful control, the hint of vulnerability in those blue eyes. Against her better judgment, she found herself wanting to say yes. Not because of his money or his power, but because of the way he'd held her hand in the dark, because of how he'd remembered her brother's situation. Because something about Julian Blackstone called to something in her that had been sleeping for a very long time. One dinner, she said finally, and I choose the place. The smile that transformed his face was worth the risk. Name it. Rosie's. Diner on 43rd, 7 o'clock tomorrow. It was her favorite place in the city, a small family-owned restaurant with the best apple pie in Chicago. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. A test of sorts. Julian didn't hesitate. I'll be there. Kay nodded, picked up her supplies and headed for the door. At the threshold, she paused and looked back. And Julian. Don't bring your checkbook, his. Soft laughter followed her into the hallway, warming her despite her lingering doubts. Rosie's diner buzzed with its usual evening crowd, working-class families, couples on budget dates, regulars who came for the coffee and stayed for the conversation. Kay sat in a booth by the window, nervously smoothing the tablecloth, wondering if Julian would actually show up. Part of her hoped he wouldn't. It would make things simpler, confirm that his interest had been fleeting, allow her to move on with her new life without the complication of whatever this was. But at precisely 7 o'clock the bell above the door chimed, and Julian Blackstone walked in. He'd dressed down for the occasion, dark jeans and a simple grey sweater instead of his usual designer suit. But there was no disguising his presence. Conversations paused as heads turned to look at the stranger, who clearly didn't belong in this neighborhood dive. Julian scanned the room, his eyes finding Kay immediately. The smile that touched his lips seemed genuinely pleased as he made his way to her booth. You came, Kay said as he slid into the seat across from her. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might send a car, or decide this place wasn't worth your time. Julian looked around, taking in the worn vinyl seats, the chipped laminate tables, the waitresses in their pink uniforms. It matters to you. That makes it worth my time. Before Kay could respond, Maggie, a waitress who had known Kay since she was a child, appeared at their table, eyeing Julian with unabashed curiosity. "This your date, Kay?" she asked, setting down menus. "He's prettier than your usual type." Kay felt her cheeks warm. "Maggie, this is Julian. Julian, this is Maggie. She's known me since I was in pigtails." "A pleasure," Julian said, offering his hand. Maggie shook it, looking impressed despite herself. "Well, aren't you fancy? I'll give you 2 a minute with the menus, but honey—" She turned to Kay with a wink. "The pie's fresh today." When she bustled away, Julian raised an eyebrow. "I take it you come here often?" "My mum used to work here when I was little, after she got sick." Kay traced a pattern on the laminate with her finger. "They were good to us, always made sure we had food, even when we couldn't pay." Julian's expression softened. "Loyalty like that is rare." "Not in my world." Kay met his gaze steadily. "The people I know don't have much, but they share what they have." He nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. "I'd like to hear more about your mother if you're willing to share." The simple request touched Kay more than any expensive gesture could have. They ordered burgers and fries, nothing fancy, and as they ate, Kay found herself telling Julian about Mavis Turner, about her infectious laugh and fierce pride, about how she'd worked 3 jobs to keep her children fed and housed after their father abandoned them, about the cancer that had taken her too young and the medical bills that had nearly destroyed what was left of their family. Julian listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly paying attention. In turn, he shared small pieces of his own story, growing up in boarding schools after his parents' death, building his first company at 22, the loneliness that came with success. "People see the money, the power," he said, picking at his fries. "They don't see the cost." "And what was the cost for you?" Kay asked softly. Julian's eyes met hers. "Everything warm, everything real." He hesitated, then added, "Until recently." The implication hung between them, charged and uncertain. After dinner, they shared a slice of apple pie, the best in Chicago, as Kay had promised. Julian insisted on paying, not with his black credit card, but with cash from his wallet. Another small gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Outside, the early autumn air had turned cool. Julian's driver waited discreetly down the block, but neither of them moved toward the car. "Thank you for tonight," Julian said, standing close enough that Kay could feel the warmth radiating from him. "For showing me a piece of your world." "Did it meet your expectations?" Kay couldn't help asking. "It exceeded them." His voice dropped lower. "You exceed them, Kay Turner." The way he said her name, like it was something precious, made her heart skip. They stood there on the sidewalk, the distance between them charged with possibility. "I should get home," Kay said finally. "Darnell has a math test tomorrow. I promised to help him study." Julian nodded, taking a step back. "Of course, may I give you a ride?" Kay hesitated, then nodded. "That would be nice." The ride to her apartment was quiet, a comfortable silence settling between them. When the car pulled up outside her building, Julian walked her to the door. "I'd like to see you again," he said simply, "if you're willing." Kay looked up at him, this man who had turned her life upside down with his money, his attention, his unexpected gentleness. She should say no. Keep things simple. Focus on rebuilding her life with Darnell. Instead, she found herself saying, "I'd like that too." Julian smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his face. "Good night, Kay." He leaned down and pressed a soft, brief kiss to her cheek, his lips warm against her skin. "Good night, Julian," she whispered, as she watched his car pull away. Kay touched her cheek where his lips had been. She was stepping into dangerous territory, she knew. But for the first time in years, she felt something beyond survival. Something like hope. Over the next 2 weeks, Kay and Julian settled into a careful routine. Dinners at small, out-of-the-way restaurants, coffee in quiet cafes. Once, a walk along the lakeshore as the sun set, painting the water gold, Julian. never pushed for more than Kay was willing to give. Their goodbyes remained chaste, a kiss on the cheek, a lingering touch of hands. He seemed content to move at her pace, to let her set the boundaries. At work, Kay requested a transfer to a different floor at the hotel, not wanting to complicate things further. Mrs. Hodges had been reluctant until a generous employee development grant mysteriously appeared in the housekeeping department's budget. Kay suspected Julian's hand in this, but chose not to confront him about it. Darnell remained skeptical of their sudden change in fortune, but as weeks passed with no disaster following, he began to relax into their new life. His grades improved. He started talking about college again, a dream that had seemed impossible just a month ago. Kay used some of Julian's money to pay off her mother's medical bills. She set up a college fund for Darnell. She even splurged on a few new outfits. For herself, nothing fancy but better quality than she'd been able to afford before, but she kept most of the money untouched. A safety net, she told herself, not because she was planning to run, not because she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then came the night Julian invited her to his penthouse for dinner. Home cooked, he promised, though Kay had her doubts about his culinary skills. She agreed, telling herself it was just another date, just another step in whatever this was becoming. When she arrived, the penthouse had been transformed. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Candles illuminated the space instead of the usual harsh overhead lighting. And the smell of something actually cooking filled the air. "You're really making dinner?" Kay asked as Julian took her coat. "I am." He smiled, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in a simple black shirt and dark jeans. "Don't sound so surprised. I wasn't born in a boardroom. Could have fooled me." Kay followed him to the kitchen where several pots simmered on the stove. "What are we having?" "My grandmother's pasta recipe, one of the few things I know how to make properly." Julian handed her a glass of wine. "She taught me before she died. Said no man should be entirely dependent on restaurants or women for food." Smart lady. Kay took a sip of the wine, rich and complex, probably hideously expensive. "Need any help?" Julian shook his head. "Just company." As he cooked, they fell into easy conversation. Julian told stories about his childhood visits to his grandmother's house in Italy, rare bright spots in an otherwise lonely upbringing. Kay shared memories of cooking with her mother, the tiny kitchen in their old apartment filled with laughter and music. The pasta, when they sat down to eat, was surprisingly good, rich with garlic and herbs, the sauce clearly made from scratch. "I'm impressed," Kay admitted. "The billionaire can cook." Julian's eyes crinkled at the corners. "One of my many hidden talents." "And what are the others?" Kay asked, feeling warm from the wine and the company. A mischievous smile curved his lips. That would be telling. The atmosphere between them had shifted, the air charged with a new awareness. Kay felt it in the way Julian's eyes lingered on her face, in the deliberate brush of his fingers against hers as he refilled her glass. After dinner, they moved to the couch, sitting closer than they had before. Outside, Chicago glittered beneath them, a carpet of light stretching to the horizon. "Why me, Julian?" Kay asked suddenly, voicing the question that had haunted her since that first night. "Of all the women in the world, why did you choose me?" Julian was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the city below. "Because you were real," he said finally. "In a world where everything feels manufactured, calculated, you were authentic." He turned to look at her. "Do you know how rare that is? To meet someone who isn't performing, who isn't trying to get something from you." "I took your money," Kay reminded him. "Yes, but you never pretended to be anything other than who you are." Julian's hand found hers, his fingers warm against her skin. "That night, our first night, you could have played a role, been what you thought I wanted. Instead, you were just Kay. Defiant, proud, kind despite your circumstances." His words wrapped around her heart, squeezing it almost painfully. "And now, what am I to you now?" Julian's gaze intensified. "Everything I didn't know I was missing." He leaned closer, his intention clear. Kay knew she should pull back, maintain the careful distance they'd established, but as his lips brushed hers, gentle, questioning, She found herself responding, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. The kiss deepened, Julian's arms encircling her, drawing her closer. Kay felt something unravel inside her, a tension she'd been carrying for longer than she could remember. Her fingers threaded through his hair, holding him to her as the kiss turned from gentle to hungry. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not for money, not for any reason except that you want to." Kay closed her eyes, torn between desire and fear. This wasn't part of the plan. Julian Blackstone was supposed to be a means to an end, a one-time solution to her problems, not a complication, not someone who could hurt her if she let him in. "I can't," she said, finally, pulling back. "I'm sorry, this is moving too fast." Disappointment flickered across Julian's face, but he nodded, respecting her decision. "I understand." But did he? Could this man who had everything possibly understand her fears? The vulnerability of wanting something, someone. She couldn't. "Afford to lose. It's not that I don't—" Kay struggled to find the words. "I just need time. This started as a transaction, Julian. I need to be sure that's not still what it is." Julian's expression turned serious. "What can I do to prove it's not?" Kay stood up, needing distance to think clearly. "Nothing. That's the point. This isn't something you can buy or arrange or control. It has to just be." Julian rose as well, keeping space between them. "Then I'll wait, however long it takes." The simple promise shouldn't have meant so much, but as Kay gathered her things to leave, she felt its weight, the possibility it represented. A different kind of future than the one she'd imagined for herself. At the door, Julian stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. "Kay, whatever happens between us, the money is yours, no strings, no expectations. I want you to know that." The reassurance should have comforted her. Instead, it left her more confused than ever, because the money wasn't what worried her anymore. What worried her was how much she was starting to care for the man who'd given it to her. The next morning, Kay woke to frantic pounding on her apartment door. She stumbled out of bed, wrapping a robe around herself as she hurried to answer it. Tasha stood in the hallway, her expression frantic. "Have you seen the news?" "What?" "No, I just woke up." Kay ushered her cousin inside. "What's wrong?" Tasha thrust her phone into Kay's hands. On the screen was a tabloid website, the headline bold and lurid. "Blackstone's secret midnight rendezvous. Billionaire pays for night with hotel maid." Below was a grainy photo of Kay entering the building where she and Julian had spent their first night together. And beside it, a clearer shot of Julian leaving the same building the next morning. Kay felt the blood drain from her face as she scrolled through the article, full of innuendo and speculation, hinting at a financial arrangement between them. "Is it true?" Tasha demanded. "Did you sleep with him for money?" Kay sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my cousin turned into a high-priced—" "Don't!" Kay cut her off sharply. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Tasha's expression softened slightly. "Kay, honey, I'm worried about you. This man, he's not our kind of people. Whatever he's offering, it's not worth—" "He offered me a chance," Kay interrupted. "And yes, there was money involved, but it wasn't for what you're thinking." Even as she said it, Kay knew how hollow it sounded. $100,000. For a night of companionship. Who would believe there hadn't been more to it? Her phone started buzzing with incoming calls and messages. Friends, co-workers, even her old landlord, all suddenly interested in her connection to Julian Blackstone. One text caught her eye, from Julian himself. "I just saw the story. I'm so sorry. Let me fix this." Fix it? How could he possibly fix this? The damage was done. Her reputation, her privacy, her dignity, all splashed across the internet for strangers to dissect and judge. And somewhere in the apartment, a door opened. Darnell stood in the hallway, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. I can explain," Kay began, but her brother just shook his head, grabbed his backpack, and walked out the front door, slamming it behind him. In the sudden silence, Kay felt her carefully reconstructed world beginning to crumble around her. The price of Julian Blackstone's attention, it seemed, was far higher than she'd ever imagined. and she was only just beginning to pay it. Kay sat alone in her apartment, staring at her silent phone. 3 hours had passed since Darnell stormed out. 3 hours of unanswered calls and texts, 3 hours of growing panic. Tasha had left shortly after, promising to drive around the neighborhood looking for him. Kay had called every one of Darnell's friends, but no one had seen him, or if they had, they weren't telling her. The tabloid story was everywhere now. Kay's phone had buzzed constantly until she finally turned off notifications. Her social media accounts were flooded with friend requests from strangers and messages ranging from cruel jokes to indecent propositions. The worst part was that she couldn't even go looking for Darnell herself. Reporters had gathered outside her building, alerted by neighbors about where Julian Blackstone's mistress lived. She was trapped, while her 16-year-old brother was out there somewhere, hurt and angry and alone. When her phone finally rang with Darnell's ringtone, Kay nearly dropped it in her haste to answer. "Dee, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine." His voice was cold, distant. "I'm at Marcus's house." Kay closed her eyes in relief. Marcus was Darnell's best friend, a good kid with responsible parents. "Thank God, I've been worried sick." "Yeah, well, now you know where I am." He sounded like he was about to hang up. "Wait, please, we need to talk about this." "Talk about what?" "How you slept with some rich guy for money." The hurt in his voice cut deeper than any accusation. "How everything we have, this apartment, my new school, all of it, is because you—" "It wasn't like that," Kay interrupted. "I swear to you, Darnell, we didn't— It wasn't what the papers are saying." "Then what was it? Because those pictures don't lie, Kay." Kay took a deep breath. "Can you just come home, please? I'll explain everything, I promise." There was a long silence, then, "Marcus's mom is driving me over. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Kay pressed the phone to her chest, breathing through the tightness there. How could she explain this to her brother? How could she make him understand a decision she barely understood herself? Her phone buzzed with another text from Julian. "Please, let me help. Tell me what you need." What she needed was for none of this to have happened. To go back to before Julian, before the money, before her life became tabloid fodder. But that wasn't possible. All she could do now was face the consequences of her choices. "I need space," she texted back. "Please don't contact me for a while." Julian's response was immediate. "I understand, but know that I'm not giving up. On us. Was there even an us to give up on?" Whatever had been growing between them felt poisoned now, tainted by public scrutiny and judgment. When Darnell arrived, escorted by Marcus's sympathetic mother, Kay was waiting with coffee and his favorite cinnamon rolls from the bakery down the street, a peace offering that felt woefully inadequate. "Thank you for bringing him home," Kay said to Marcus's mother. The woman nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "Of course, Darnell is welcome at our house any time." The implication was clear. When things get too difficult here, he has somewhere to go. After she left, Kay and Darnell sat at their small kitchen table, the cinnamon rolls untouched between them. "I'm listening," Darnell said finally. Kay rapped, her hands around her coffee mug, drawing strength from its warmth. "After Mom died, we were drowning in debt. The medical bills, the funeral costs. I was working 2 jobs and we were still falling behind. Then Mr. Blackstone, Julian, offered me money. A lot of money. For sex," Darnell said flatly. "No." Kay met her brother's eyes. "For company, one night of my time, we talked. We slept, just slept in the same bed, that was it." Darnell's expression was skeptical. "And he paid you $100,000 for that? Come on, Kay, I wasn't born yesterday." "I know how it sounds, but I swear to you that's what happened." Kay reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I did it for us, Dee, so we could have a chance at a better life. By selling yourself." The words were harsh, but his voice cracked on them. "Mom would have never—" "Mom did what she had to do to keep us fed and housed," Kay interrupted. "Just like I did what I had to do to give you a future. Not like this." Darnell stood up abruptly. "I would have rather stayed on Tasha's couch than have everyone at school talking about how my sister is some billionaire's paid—" "Don't?" Kay's voice sharpened. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Darnell looked away, his young face twisted with emotion. "People are saying things, Kay. Terrible things. About you. About us." Kay's heart broke for him. for all her worry about providing. Financially for her brother, she'd never considered this cost, the social price he would pay for her decisions. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I never meant for any of this to happen. After that first night, Julian and I started seeing each other. For real, no money involved." "You like him?" Darnell sounded incredulous. Kay hesitated. Did she? The question seemed so simple, yet the answer was anything but. "He's not what I expected," she said finally. "He's different when you get to know him." "Different enough to be worth all this?" Darnell gestured vaguely, encompassing their situation, the reporters outside, the scandal consuming their lives. "I don't know," Kay admitted, "but what I do know is that I love you, and everything I've done has been to give you the life Mom would have wanted for you." Darnell was quiet for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, he sat back down. "So what happens now?" It was the question Kay had been asking herself all day. Now we weather the storm together. The story will blow over eventually. And him, Blackstone? Kay's throat tightened. "I don't know. That's complicated." Darnell reached for a cinnamon roll, breaking it apart without eating it. "You know what's not complicated? Family. We stick together no matter what." He looked up, his young face suddenly serious beyond his years. "If he hurts you, Kay, rich or not, He won't." Kay reached across the table, and this time Darnell let her take his hand. "But thank you for having my back." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Always." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a start, and right now that was enough. The next few days passed in a blur of unwanted attention and difficult conversations. Kay took a leave of absence from both her jobs, the hotel because the management suggested it would be best for everyone, and the diner because she couldn't bear the pitying looks from people who'd known her all her life. Darnell refused to go to school, and Kay didn't push him. They ordered groceries for delivery and kept the curtains drawn, waiting for the media frenzy to die down. Julian continued to text daily, simple messages that required no response. "Thinking of you. I miss you. I'm here when you're ready." Kay read each one but didn't reply. She needed space to think, to figure out what she wanted, what she needed without his influence. On the fourth day of their self-imposed isolation, someone knocked on their door. Kay approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. David, Hayes, Julian's assistant, stood in the hallway, his expression as impeccably neutral as always. Kay opened the door a crack, keeping the security chain in place. "What do you want?" "Miss Turner." Hayes nodded politely. "I've come with a proposition from Mr. Blackstone." "I'm not interested in any more propositions," Kay said coldly. "I think you'll want to hear this one." Hayes held out an envelope. "Mr. Blackstone is holding a press conference tomorrow morning. He asked me to give you this, and to tell you he understands if you choose not to come." Kay took the envelope reluctantly. "A press conference about what?" "About the situation." "About you?" Hayes adjusted his tie. "He wanted you to know his plans before he proceeded." After Hayes left, Kay opened the envelope. Inside was a brief note in Julian's bold handwriting. "Kay, I won't let them define you. Define us with their lies. I'm going to tell the truth. Tomorrow, but I wanted you to know first. Whatever happens after, know that I meant what I said. I'm not giving up." Jatached was a printed press release announcing that Julian Blackstone would be making a personal statement regarding recent media speculation. At 10 a.m. the following day at the Blackstone Group headquarters, Kay stared at the papers, a cold knot of dread forming in her stomach. What was Julian planning? And would his version of the truth make things better or infinitely worse? She stayed, up most of the night, turning over possibilities in her mind. By morning, she'd made her decision. At 9:30 a.m., she took a taxi to the Blackstone Group building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in downtown Chicago. She wore her best outfit, a simple navy dress she'd bought for job interviews, and kept her head high as she approached the lobby, where a crowd of reporters had already gathered. The security guard stopped her at the entrance. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The building is closed to the public this morning for a private event." "I'm here to see Julian Blackstone," Kay said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "He's expecting me." The guard looked skeptical, but before he could respond, a familiar voice spoke from behind him. "She's with me." David Hayes stepped forward, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of Kay. He quickly composed himself and gestured for the guard to let her through. "Miss Turner, Mr. Blackstone will be surprised to see you." "That's the idea," Kay said, following him to a private elevator. As they rode up to the executive floor, Hayes studied her with new interest. "May I ask what changed your mind?" "Nothing changed," Kay replied. "I just decided it was time to stop hiding." The elevator opened directly into a luxurious reception area. Through a set of glass doors, Kay could see a large conference room being prepared for the press event, cameras being set up, journalists taking their seats. And there, standing off to the side in quiet conversation with a woman in a severe business suit, was Julian. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, visible even from a distance. His usual immaculate appearance was slightly rumpled, as if he'd been running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit Kay had noticed during their time together. When he turned and saw her, his whole body went still. For a heartbeat, they just looked at each other across the space. Then Julian excused himself and walked toward her, his eyes never leaving her face. "Kay." He stopped a respectful distance away, uncertainty in his expression. "You came. I got your message," she said. "What exactly are you planning to do, Julian? Tell the truth, clear your name." "And how do you plan to do that?" Kay asked, folding her arms across her chest. Julian glanced toward the conference room, where more reporters were filing in. "By taking responsibility, by making it clear that you did nothing wrong." "And you did?" Kay raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to say, exactly?" Julian's jaw tightened. "That I was the one who approached you. That I offered you money for your time. That I turned something that could have been genuine into a transaction, because that's the only way I know how to connect with people." He met her gaze directly. "That the mistake was mine, not yours." The raw honesty in his voice caught Kay off guard. "Why would you do that? Your reputation—" "My reputation can survive this," Julian interrupted. "Yours might not. And that's not fair, Kay. None of this is fair to you." Before Kay could respond, the woman in the business suit approached them. "Mr. Blackstone, we're ready to begin." Julian nodded, then turned back to Kay. "Will you stay? You don't have to say anything. Just be here." Kay hesitated, then nodded. "I'll stay." Relief washed across Julian's face. He reached for her hand, gave it a gentle squeeze, then followed the woman toward the conference room. Kay stayed in the reception area, watching through the glass as Julian took his place behind a podium emblazoned with the Blackstone Group logo. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward eagerly, hungry for scandal. Julian's voice came through the speakers mounted in the reception area. "Good morning. Thank you for coming. I've called this press conference to address the recent speculation about my personal life, specifically regarding my relationship with Michaela Turner." He paused, his eyes finding Kay through the glass. Something in his expression softened. "The stories you've read, the insinuations you've made, have done a grave disservice to a woman of integrity and dignity. So let me be clear. Yes, I initially offered Miss Turner money for her companionship. Not for sex, as has been crudely suggested, but for her time, for her presence. Because I was lonely and she was kind, and I didn't know how to reach out to another human being without turning it into a business transaction." A murmur ran through the assembled journalists. Julian continued, his voice growing stronger. "The fault was mine, not hers. I turned something that should have been sacred into a contract. I reduced a connection between two people to dollars and cents, because that was safer than admitting I needed someone." Kay's heart pounded in her chest. This was not what she had expected. This public confession, this taking of blame. Since that night, Miss Turner and I have been getting to know each other, like normal people do. And what I've discovered is that she is extraordinary, not because of anything she did for me, but because of who she is. A woman who has faced tremendous hardship with grace and strength. A sister, who has sacrificed everything for her brother's future. A person of such authenticity and courage that she makes me want to be better than I am. Julian's voice cracked slightly on the last words. He paused, collecting himself, then continued with renewed determination. So I am asking you, all of you, to leave her alone. Direct your questions, your judgment, your speculation at me. I can take it. I deserve it. She does not. The room erupted with questions, reporters shouting over each other. Julian raised a hand for silence. One last thing. To those who have used this situation to demean or harass Miss Turner or her family, you will be hearing from my legal team. That's all for now, thank you. As Julian stepped away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions, Kay felt tears burning in her eyes. No one had ever stood up for her like that. No one had ever taken the blame to protect her. When Julian emerged from the conference room, his face was tense, his shoulders rigid with stress. But when he saw Kay waiting, something in his expression cleared. Did I make it worse? He asked quietly. Kay shook her head, not trusting her voice. Let's get out of here, Julian said, gesturing toward a side door. My car is waiting downstairs. They rode the elevator down in silence, Julian keeping a careful distance between them. In the parking garage, his driver held the door of a sleek, black car open for them. Once they were settled in the back seat, privacy screen raised between them and the driver, Julian finally turned to Kay. Say something, please. Kay looked at this man who had just publicly humbled himself for her, who had chosen her reputation over his own, who had, for perhaps the first time in his life, been completely vulnerable in front of others. Why did you do that? She asked softly. Because it was the truth. Julian's blue eyes held hers. And because I love you. The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Kay's breath caught in her throat. You don't have to say anything, Julian continued quickly. I know it's too soon. I know this whole situation is a mess, but I needed you to know. Julian. Kay didn't know what to say, how to respond to this declaration that had turned her world upside down yet again. It's okay. He smiled slightly, though his eyes remained serious. I told you I'd wait. I meant it. Kay looked down at her hands, then back up at him. I need to think about all of this, about us. Julian nodded. Of course, where can I take you? Home, Kay said after a moment. I need to talk to Darnell. The drive to Kay's apartment was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Julian made no move to get out of the car. Call me when you're ready, he said simply. No pressure, no timeline. Kay nodded, her hand on the door handle. Then, following an impulse she didn't fully understand, she leaned across the seat and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Thank you, she whispered, for what you did today. Julian's expression was a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. You're worth it, Kay Turner. I just wish I'd realized that from the beginning. When Kay entered her apartment, she found Darnell sitting on the couch, watching Julian's press conference on his laptop. He looked up as she closed the door. You were there? He asked, gesturing to the screen where a news anchor was analyzing Julian's statement. Yes, Kay said, setting down her purse. I wanted to hear what he had to say. Darnell closed the laptop. He took all the blame. He did. Why would he do that? Guys like him, rich guys, they don't take the fall for anyone. Kay sat beside her brother. Maybe he's not like other rich guys. Darnell studied her face. You really like him, don't you? Think I might, Kay admitted. It was the first time she'd said it aloud, even to herself. But it's complicated. Because of how you met? Or because of who he is? Both. Neither. Kay sighed. Because I'm scared, Dee. Getting involved with Julian means stepping into his world, a world I don't understand, where I don't belong. Says, who? Darnell challenged. You belong wherever you decide you belong. Kay smiled at her brother's simple wisdom. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just never listened to me. He bumped her shoulder with his. So what are you going to do now? It was the question Kay had been avoiding. What did she want? A relationship with Julian meant public scrutiny, constant judgment, living under a microscope. but it also meant being with a man who saw her, really saw her, and valued what he saw enough to defend it publicly. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "I need some time to figure things out." Darnell nodded. "Well, while you're figuring it out, can I go back to school? Marcus says the press has moved on to some celebrity. Divorce, so no one's camping outside anymore." "Of course," Kay pulled him into a hug. "And Dee, I'm sorry about all of this. You didn't ask for your life to be turned upside down." "Neither did you," Darnell pointed out. "But we're still standing, right? That's what Mum always said. Turners bend, but we don't break." Kay's throat tightened with emotion. "That's right. We don't break." A week passed, then 2. The media frenzy died down just as Julian had promised it would. His public statement had shifted the narrative. Instead of salacious speculation about a billionaire and a maid, the story became one of a powerful man taking responsibility for his actions. Of a connection that had begun unconventionally, but grown into something real. Kay returned to work at the diner, though not the hotel. She needed the routine, the normalcy of serving coffee and chatting with regular customers. Most people were kind, avoiding the subject entirely, or offering quiet support. A few made crude comments, but Rosie, the diner's owner, had thrown out the first person who dared to disrespect her girl in her establishment. After that, the negativity stayed. Outside, Julian kept his distance as promised, though he sent a single text each day. Just checking in, just letting her know he was thinking of her. Never pushing, never demanding. Kay read each message, sometimes typing responses she never sent. The truth was, she missed him. Missed their conversations, their dinners, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. But she needed this time apart to understand her own feelings, separate from the whirlwind of scandal and public opinion. Then came the night she couldn't sleep, her mind spinning with thoughts of Julian, of what might be possible if she was brave enough to try, of what she might regret if she wasn't. At 2 a.m. she finally reached for her phone and typed a simple message, "I'm ready to talk." Julian's response came within minutes, as if he'd been waiting, sleepless as well. Name, the time and place. They agreed. To meet the next evening at the lakefront park, where they'd walked once before. Neutral ground, public but not too public. The autumn day was crisp and clear, the lake a deep blue beneath the late afternoon sun. Kay arrived early, finding a bench with a view of the water. She wrapped her coat tighter against the breeze, watching. "Sailboats in the distance. Is this seat taken?" Julian's voice. Kay looked up to find him standing beside the bench, looking more casual than she'd ever seen him in jeans and a navy peacoat. His hair was tousled by the wind, his expression cautiously hopeful. "It's all yours," Kay said, moving over slightly. Julian sat beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. For a while they just watched the water in companionable silence. "How have you been?" Julian asked finally. "Better," Kay said. "The reporters are gone. Darnell's back in school. Things are settling," Julian nodded. "I'm glad to hear it." He hesitated. "And you, how are you?" Kay turned to look at him directly. "I've been thinking, a lot, about us, about what I want." "And what do you want, Kay?" Julian's voice was low, intense. "I want to know if this is real," she said simply. "If what's between us is strong enough to survive everything that comes with it. The public scrutiny, the differences in our backgrounds, the way we started." Julian's eyes never left hers. "I believe it is. But the only way to know for sure is to try." "That's a big risk," Kay pointed out. "The biggest I've ever taken," Julian agreed. "But you're worth the risk, Kay. The question is, am I worth it to you?" The directness of the question caught Kay off guard. Was Julian Blackstone, with all his complications, his wealth, his power, worth upending her carefully reconstructed life for? "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I want to find out." Something like relief washed across Julian's face. "So, where do we go from here?" "We start over," Kay said. "No money, no arrangements, just two people getting to know each other, seeing if this thing between us is real or just circumstance." Julian smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. "I'd like that." He offered his hand, palm up, an echo of that first night when he'd led her to the couch and simply held her hand in silence. Kay placed her hand in his, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. "Hello," Julian said softly. "I'm Julian Blackstone, and I'd very much like to get to know you, Michaela Turner." Kay couldn't help but smile at the simple gesture. "Nice to meet you, Julian. I think I'd like to get to know you too." As the sun began to set over the lake, painting the water in shades of gold and crimson, they talked, really talked, about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, about what they wanted from life, from each other. Julian spoke of his loneliness, of building an empire to fill the void left by his parents' death. Kay shared her struggle to keep her family together after losing her mother, her determination to give Darnell the future he deserved. When darkness fell and the air grew too cold to ignore, they walked back to Julian's car, hand in hand. "Can I drive you home?" he asked. Kay hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but just home. I meant what I said about starting slow." Julian smiled. "I can do slow." The drive to Kay's apartment was comfortable, the silence between them no longer awkward or charged with unspoken words. When they arrived, Julian walked her to the door but made no move to come inside. "Thank you for tonight," he said, "for giving us a chance." "We're just at the beginning," Kay reminded him. "There's a lot we still need to figure out." Julian nodded. "I know, but it's a start." He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "Good night, Kay." "Good night, Julian." As she watched him walk back to his car, Kay felt something settle in her chest, a quiet certainty that whatever happened next, she was making the right choice. Not the easy choice, certainly, but the right one. Inside, Darnell was waiting up for her, pretending to be absorbed in his homework at the kitchen table. "So?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "How'd it go?" Kay hung up her coat. "We're going to try, take things slow, see what happens." Darnell nodded, studying her face. "You look different." "Different how?" "I don't know. Lighter, maybe." He shrugged. "Like when Mom used to sing while she was cooking. Even when things were bad, she'd sing, and for a little while everything felt like it might be okay." The comparison brought tears to Kay's eyes. "I miss her," she said softly. "Me too." Darnell closed his textbook. "But she'd want us to be happy." "Kay, both of us, even if it means taking chances." Kay smiled at her brother's wisdom. "When did you get so smart about relationships?" "I watch a lot of TV," Darnell deadpanned. They laughed together, and for the first time in a long time, Kay felt the weight on her shoulders lighten. The future was still uncertain. Her relationship with Julian was just beginning, fragile and new. But for tonight, in this moment, she allowed herself to hope, to believe that maybe, just maybe, the price of silence had been worth paying after all. 3 weeks later, Kay sat at her desk in the small office of the community center where she now worked. After the scandal, she'd decided not to return to the hotel, even when management had awkwardly offered her position back. Instead, she'd used some of Julian's money to finish the degree she'd abandoned when her mother got sick and found a job, coordinating programs for at-risk youth. It was meaningful work, using her own experience to help kids like Darnell navigate the challenges of growing up without resources. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough. And for the first time in years, Kay was doing something that fulfilled her, not just kept her afloat. Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "Still on for dinner tonight?" Kay smiled as she typed back, "Wouldn't miss it. 7 p.m. at my place. Things." Between them had progressed slowly, deliberately. Dinner dates twice a week, long walks by the lake, conversations that lasted until dawn. They were building something real this time, something based on mutual respect and genuine connection, not transaction. Julian had been patient, never pushing for more than Kay was ready to give. They hadn't slept together again, not even just to sleep. They were taking their time, getting to know each other properly. It hadn't been easy. The differences in their worlds created friction sometimes. Julian's wealth and privilege occasionally blinded him to realities Kay had lived with all her life. And Kay's fierce independence sometimes made it hard for her to accept Julian's desire to make her life easier. But they were learning, compromising, finding their way together. As Kay gathered her things to leave for the day, her phone rang, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Is this Michaela Turner?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, it is. Who's calling?" "My name is Victoria Reeves. I'm a reporter with Chicago Tribune." The woman's voice was professional, detached. "I'm working on a story about Julian Blackstone and his relationships. I was hoping you might be willing to provide some insight." Kay's stomach tightened. Just when she thought the scrutiny had died down, here it was again. "I have nothing to say to you." "I think you might want to hear what I have to say first," Victoria replied. "I've been approached by another woman, someone with a similar story to yours, someone else Julian Blackstone paid for her companionship." Kay's hand tightened on the phone. "What are you talking about?" "It seems Mr. Blackstone has a pattern," Victoria continued. "Finding vulnerable women, offering them money for their time. This woman came forward after seeing his press conference about you. She says their arrangement was ongoing until quite recently." "Until recently?" Kay repeated, her voice faint. "Yes. According to my source, their last meeting was just 3 days before the story about you broke." Victoria's voice softened slightly. "I thought you should know before the story goes public. I'd still like your comment." Kay ended the call without responding, her mind reeling. 3 days before, while he was pursuing Kay, while he was taking her to dinner, holding her hand, kissing her cheek. It couldn't be true, could it? But why would someone make up such a specific lie? And hadn't Julian himself admitted that he'd turned to transactions because they were safer than real connections? What if Kay hadn't been the first? What if she wasn't the only one? Her phone buzzed again. Julian confirming dinner details. Kay stared at the message, unable to respond. How could she face him tonight with these accusations ringing in her ears? How could she look into his eyes and not wonder if he'd been lying all along? As she left the community center, Kay's mind was a storm of doubt and confusion. Just when she'd begun to trust again, to believe in the possibility of a future with Julian, this shadow from his past, or present, threatened to destroy everything they'd built. Tonight she would confront him. Tonight she would learn whether the man she was falling in love with was truly worthy of her heart, or if the price of her silence had bought her nothing but more pain. Kay paced her small living room, each step heavy with anxiety. Dinner preparations sat abandoned in the kitchen, a meal she'd carefully planned for her evening with Julian now forgotten, as Victoria Reeves's words echoed in her mind. "It seems Mr. Blackstone has a pattern. Finding vulnerable women, offering them money for their time." The doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. Kay took a deep breath, smoothed her hands over her dress and went to answer it. Julian stood on her doorstep, a bottle of wine in one hand and a small bouquet of flowers in the other. His smile faded as he took in her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, stepping inside. Kay closed the door behind him, keeping more distance between them than she had in weeks. "We need to talk." Julian set the wine and flowers on the side table, his body language shifting from relaxed to alert. "Of course. What's happened?" "I got a call today," Kay said, her voice steadier than she felt. "From a reporter at the Chicago Tribune, Victoria Reeves." Julian's expression remained neutral, giving away nothing. "What did she want?" "She said she's working on a story about you, about your relationships." Kay watched his face carefully. "She said another woman came forward. Someone else you paid for her companionship." For a moment, Julian was perfectly still. Then he exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I see." "Is it true?" Kay demanded, her heart pounding. "Have there been others? Was I just one? In a line of women you've bought?" Julian moved toward the couch. "Can we sit down, please?" Kay remained standing. "Just answer the question, Julian." He met her gaze directly. "Yes, there have been others, not many, but yes." The confirmation hit Kay like a physical blow. Even though she'd suspected it might be true, hearing him admit it made her stomach twist with hurt and betrayal. While you were seeing me. Her voice cracked slightly. No. Julian's response was immediate, emphatic. Absolutely not. After that first night with you, everything changed, Kay. I couldn't go back to that. Kay wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But the doubt had taken root, poisoning everything. The reporter said this woman claimed your last meeting was 3 days before. The story about us broke. Julian's expression darkened. That's not possible. Why should I believe you? Kay asked, the pain making her voice sharp. You lied by omission. You let me think I was special, that what happened between us was unique. You are special, Julian insisted, rising to his feet again. What we have is unique. Those other arrangements, they were transactions, mutually beneficial exchanges of time and money. Nothing more. Just like our first night, Kay pointed out bitterly. Julian flinched. At first, yes, that's what I thought. It would be. But you changed everything, Kay. You saw through me. You made me want more than just a few hours of companionship. You made me want connection, real connection. Kay crossed her arms over her chest, protecting herself. How many, Julian? How many women have you paid? He hesitated, then answered, truthfully, 3. Before you. And this latest accusation? The woman who says you were still seeing her until recently. It's not true. Julian's voice was firm. The last arrangement I had ended over a year ago. I haven't been with anyone, paid or otherwise, since before I met you. Kay wanted to believe him, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and she couldn't ignore it. How convenient that it's your word against hers, a billionaire against some unnamed woman. Julian's expression tightened. Ask me anything about these arrangements, Kay. I'll tell you the truth. No more secrets. Why? Kay asked, the question that had been haunting her since the beginning. Why pay for company? A man like you could have anyone. Anyone who wanted my money, my power, my connections. Julian's voice was raw with honesty. Do you know how exhausting it is to never know if someone wants you or what you can give them? With these arrangements, it was clear, defined, safe. Safe, Kay repeated. Because real relationships are dangerous. Yes, Julian's eyes met hers. Because real feelings, real connections, can destroy you. I learned that when my parents died, when the business partners they trusted stole half their company while I was still grieving, when every relationship after that came with an agenda. The vulnerability in his confession caught Kay off guard. This wasn't the calculated response of a man covering his tracks. This was Julian, her Julian, exposing the wounds that had shaped him. So you paid for companionship, she said, her voice softer. To keep control. Yes. He took a step toward her. Until I realized that all the control in the world couldn't give me what I really needed. And what's that? Someone who sees me, not the billionaire, not the power broker, just me. His voice dropped lower. You're the only one who ever has, Kay. Kay felt tears burning behind her eyes. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but there was still the reporter's claim. The unnamed woman. If what you're saying is true, then who is this woman? Why would she lie? Julian's expression hardened. There are many people who would benefit from damaging my reputation. Business rivals, former employees, or it could be someone looking for a payout. Claim an affair, threaten to go public, hope I'll pay to keep it quiet. Has that happened before? Kay asked. Attempts, yes. It comes with the territory. Julian sighed. Let me look into this, Kay. Let me find out who's behind it. Kay shook her head. You're missing the point, Julian. Even if this specific accusation is false, the pattern is real. You did pay other women. You did treat relationships like business deals. She paused, struggling to articulate the hurt. How do I know I'm not just the latest transaction? That this whole relationship isn't just another form of payment? Julian's face showed real pain at her words. Because I love you, Kay. Not for what you do for me. Not for how you make me feel, but for who you are, your strength, your integrity, your heart. The sincerity in his voice made Kay's resolve waver, but she needed time, space to think, to process, to decide what she truly believed. I need you to leave, she said quietly. I need time to think about all this. Julian looked as though he Wanted to argue, but instead he nodded. I understand. But Kay, this woman, this story, please don't make any decisions until we know the truth. I'll try, Kay promised, though her voice lacked conviction. At the door, Julian turned to her. One last time. Whatever you decide, know that what we have is real, at least for me. After he left, Kay sank onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. She believed Julian, or wanted to believe him, but the revelation of his past arrangements had shaken her. Trust, not because of what he'd done exactly, but because of what it revealed about him. About his inability to form real connections without the safety net of a transaction. Could a man like that ever truly love someone? Or was everything, in the end, just another deal to be negotiated? The next morning, Kay woke to a text from Julian. I'm looking into the claims. In the meantime, please don't speak to Victoria Reeves. I'll have answers soon. She didn't reply. Couldn't find the words yet. When Darnell emerged from his room, he took one look at her face and asked, What happened? Kay explained briefly, leaving out the more sensitive details. Her brother listened without interrupting, his young face serious. Do you believe him? Darnell asked when she finished. About this woman lying? I don't know, Kay admitted. I want to. Darnell was quiet for a moment. You know what Mom would say, trust but verify. Kay smiled despite herself. It was exactly what Mavis Turner would have said. Her mother had been a woman of faith but also practical wisdom. She believed in giving people chances, but never blind trust. When did you get so smart? Kay asked, reaching out to ruffle her brother's hair. Darnell ducked away, but he was smiling too. I've always been smart, you just never listen. For the next 3 days, Kay went through the motions of her life, work, home, taking care of Darnell, while her mind circled endlessly around Julian's revelation and what it meant for them. Julian texted daily with updates on his investigation, but she responded only with brief acknowledgements. She needed this distance to think clearly, without his presence clouding her judgment. On the 4th day, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against her better judgment, Kay answered. Ms. Turner, this is Victoria Reeves again. Kay's grip tightened on the phone. I told you I have no comment. I'm not calling for a comment, Victoria said. I'm calling because I think you should know. My source has withdrawn her claims. She's now saying she made it all up. Kay's heart skipped. What? She admitted that she never had any arrangement with Julian Blackstone. She was paid to make. The accusation. Paid? By who? She wouldn't say. Victoria sounded frustrated. But I thought you deserved to know the truth. After hanging up, Kay sat staring at her phone. Julian had been telling the truth about this accusation, at least. But the fact remained that he had paid other women before her. The question was whether that past defined their future. Before she could call Julian with this news, her phone buzzed with a text from him. I know who was behind the false claims. Can I see you? I have proof. An hour later, Julian arrived at her apartment with a file folder in hand. His face was grim, his eyes shadowed with fatigue, as if he hadn't slept in days. You look terrible, Kay said, as she let him in. A small smile touched his lips. Missed you too. They sat at her small kitchen table and Julian opened the folder. Inside were photos, documents and transcripts of text messages. The woman who made the claim is Alexandra Winters, Julian explained. A struggling actress who's done this kind of thing before. She was paid $50,000 to approach Victoria Reeves with a fake story about an arrangement with me. Paid by who? Kay asked. Julian turned to the next page in the file. Eliza Montgomery. The name meant nothing to Kay. Who is she? My ex-fiancée. Julian's expression darkened. We were engaged 3 years ago. It ended badly when I discovered she'd been feeding information about my business deals to a competitor, who happened to be her lover. Kay absorbed this new information. So this was revenge? After all this time? Partly revenge, Julian. Agreed, but also opportunity. When our story broke, she saw a chance to damage me further. She's always been vindictive. How did you find all this out? Julian hesitated. I have resources, people who can trace financial transactions, phone records. I know it sounds invasive, but I needed to know the truth. Kay studied the evidence before her. It was thorough, convincing. Julian had been telling the truth about the false accusation. But there was still the matter of the real arrangements he'd had in the past. Victoria Reeves called me, Kay said. She told me the woman recanted. Julian nodded. I confronted Alexandra with what I knew. She admitted everything, including who paid her. So the Tribune isn't running the story. No, but Kay... Julian reached across the table, not quite touching her. Even though this accusation was false, I need you to know that I haven't hidden anything else from you. Yes, there were other arrangements before you. 3 of them, as I said. All ended before I met you. All consensual, all clearly defined. Kay met his gaze. And all empty. Yes. Julian's voice softened. That's why what we have is so different. So precious to me. It's real, Kay. Messy and complicated and sometimes painful, but real. Kay was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. I believe you, she said finally. About the false accusations, about your past arrangements. But Julian, I need to know that whatever is between us isn't just another transaction, that you're not offering security, stability, comfort in exchange for me. Julian's expression was pained. How can I prove that to you? What can I do to show you that this isn't about exchange for me anymore? I don't know, Kay admitted. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're too different. Maybe our worlds just don't fit together. I don't believe that, Julian said, an edge of desperation in his voice. Kay, please, tell me what you need from me. What did she need? Kay wasn't sure herself. Certainty? There was no such thing. Guarantees. Life didn't offer those, no matter how much money or power you had. I need time, she said finally. Space to think, to figure out what I want, separate from what you can give me. Julian looked as though she'd struck him, but he nodded. Of course, however much time you need. He stood, gathering the file. I'll wait, Kay, for as long as it takes. As he headed for the door, Kay called after him. Julian, he turned back, hope flaring briefly in his eyes. Thank you, she said softly, for finding the truth. A sad smile touched his lips. Always. After he left, Kay sat at the table for a long time, her thoughts a tangled mess of conflicting emotions. She believed Julian. She cared for him, more than she'd allowed herself to admit. But there was still something holding her back, something she couldn't quite name. 2 weeks passed without contact between them. Kay threw herself into her work. At the community center, finding purpose in helping others navigate challenges similar to those she'd faced. On weekends, she volunteered at a local soup kitchen, the same one where her mother had taken her and Darnell when things were at their worst after their father left. Serving others helped Kay gain perspective. The people who came through the soup kitchen line had real problems: hunger, homelessness, illness without health care. Next to their struggles, her relationship complications seemed almost trivial. Yet the absence of Julian left an ache she couldn't ignore. She missed his quiet strength, his unexpected vulnerability, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. She missed their conversations that stretched into the night, the feeling of being truly seen and valued. But still, she waited. Needing to be certain that what she felt was real, not gratitude, not obligation, not the seductive pull of security after a lifetime of struggle. On a cold Saturday in late October, Kay was working her usual shift at the soup kitchen. The place was crowded, steam rising from the serving tables as she ladled thick stew into bowls for the line of people seeking warmth and nourishment. Kay Turner. She looked up, startled to hear her name. An older woman with kind eyes stood across the serving table. Yes, Kay replied, continuing to serve. I'm Margaret Blackstone, the woman said. Julian's grandmother. Kay nearly dropped the ladle. His grandmother? From Italy. Margaret smiled. The very same, though I live in Chicago now. Have for years. She gestured to the serving line. May I help? We can talk while we work. Too surprised to refuse, Kay nodded. Margaret moved behind the serving table. washed her hands and donned gloves and an apron with the practiced ease of someone familiar with this kind of work. As they served side by side, Margaret spoke quietly. "Julian doesn't know I'm here. He'd be furious if he knew I was interfering." "Why are you?" Kay asked. "Because my grandson is miserable, and because I believe you might be exactly what he needs." Margaret handed a bowl of stew to an elderly man with a gentle smile. "Julian told me about you, about how you met, about what happened after." Kay felt her cheeks warm. "He told you everything?" "He's never been able to hide things from me," Margaret said with a small laugh. "I'm the only family he has left, you know. After his parents died, he changed, closed himself off, built walls so high I thought no one would ever get through them." Kay continued serving, listening. "And then he met you," Margaret continued. "And for the first time in years I saw a spark of the boy he used to be. Before the loss, before the loneliness." "Why are you telling me this?" Kay asked. Margaret's eyes, the same striking blue as Julian's, met hers directly. "Because you need to know that what's between you isn't just another transaction for him. It's salvation." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. "That's a lot of responsibility to put on someone," Kay said finally. "It is," Margaret agreed. "Too much, perhaps. But I thought you should know the truth before you make your decision." They worked in silence for a while, the line of hungry people slowly dwindling. As the lunch service came to an end, Margaret removed her apron. "He's a good man, Kay, flawed certainly, damaged in ways he's still learning to understand, but good at his core." She touched Kay's arm gently. "Whatever you decide, know that you've already changed him for the better." As Margaret turned to leave, Kay called after her, "How did you know where to find me?" A mysterious smile crossed the older woman's face. "When you've lived as long as I have, you develop resources of your own." She paused. "He's looking for you, you know, not to pressure you, just to see that you're all right." After Margaret left, Kay finished her shift in a daze, her mind replaying their conversation. Julian's grandmother, the one person he'd spoken of with genuine warmth, had sought her out. Had told her Julian was changed, was looking for her. What did that mean for them? As Kay helped clean up after the lunch service, the soup kitchen director approached her. "Kay, there's someone asking for you at the front door. Says his name is Julian Blackstone." Kay's heart leaped in her chest. She dried her hands on her apron, suddenly nervous. "Tell him I'll be right there." Taking a deep breath, Kay made her way to the entrance. And there he was, Julian standing just inside the doorway, looking both out of place in his expensive coat and somehow exactly where he belonged. When he saw her, his whole body seemed to still. "Kay? Julian?" She approached slowly. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," he said simply. "I've been checking places you might be. I just wanted to see that you were okay." Just as his grandmother had said. Kay studied his face. The dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the hope he couldn't quite hide. "How did you know to look here?" she asked. "You mentioned it once. That your mother brought you here when things were difficult." His eyes held hers. I remembered. Of course he had. Julian remembered everything she told him, stored away each detail as if it were precious. "I've been volunteering here on weekends," Kay explained. "It helps me keep perspective." Julian nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Kay, I know I promised to give you space, and I will, after this. But there's something I need to say first." Kay glanced around. The soup kitchen was nearly empty now, just a few volunteers cleaning up. "Let's walk," she suggested. Outside, the late October air was crisp, leaves crunching beneath their feet as they made their way toward a small park across from the soup kitchen. They walked in silence until they reached a bench beneath a maple, tree blazing with autumn color. "Your grandmother came to see me," Kay said as they sat down. Julian's eyes widened in surprise. "Nonna, when?" "Today at the soup kitchen." Kay smiled slightly at his expression. "She's quite determined." "She's meddlesome," Julian corrected, though there was fondness in his voice. "What did she say to you?" "That you're miserable without me," Kay said quietly. "That I've changed you." Julian sighed. "She's right, on both counts." He turned to face Kay fully. But that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to pressure you or rush your decision. Then why are you here? Julian reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Kay's breath caught at the sight of it. This isn't what you think, he said quickly, seeing her expression. It's not a ring, not yet. He placed the box on the bench between them. It's a key. Cautiously, Kay opened the box. Inside was a simple silver key, nothing fancy or ornate. A key to what? She asked. To a storage unit, Julian explained, where I've put everything. Kay looked at him, confused. Everything. My companies, my properties, my investments, all of it. Julian's eyes never left hers. I've placed everything I own in a trust. I can't touch it, can't control it, can't use it. Kay stared at him, stunned. Why would you do that? Because I need you to know that what I feel for you has nothing to do with what I can give you. Nothing to do with transactions or arrangements or control. Julian's voice dropped lower. The key is symbolic. It's me letting go of control of power, of everything I've used to keep people at a distance. Julian. Kay was at a loss for words. That's extreme. A small smile touched his lips. I've never been good at half measures. How long? 1 year, he said. That's how long the trust is irrevocable. 1 year of living on a regular salary in a regular apartment, working as a consultant rather than a CEO. 1 year of being just Julian, not Julian Blackstone billionaire. Kay struggled to process this. You did this, Yin, for me? For us, Julian corrected gently, but mostly for myself. Because I need to know that I can be worthy of you without all the trappings, that I can be a man you could love, not just a fortune you could use. The vulnerability in his confession took Kay's breath away. This was Julian stripped bare, not of his wealth, but of his defenses. The walls he'd built after his parents' death, the control he'd maintained through transactions and arrangements, the distance he'd kept from genuine connection, all of it sacrificed for the chance to be real with her. You don't owe me anything, Julian continued, his voice barely above a whisper. But if I could buy back that night, not with money, but with my whole heart, I'd give it all just to start over. Name your price. Kay looked at this man who had upended his life for a chance at something genuine, who had exposed his vulnerabilities, his fears, his hopes, who had chosen her over the empire he'd built. I don't want your money, she said softly. Hope flickered in Julian's eyes. Then what do you want? Kay reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek. The one thing you've never sold, the truth. And your word that you won't run when I'm not perfect, Julian. Caught her hand, pressing it more firmly against his face. You have both, always. He reached into his other pocket and placed a second, smaller box beside the first. This one, when opened, revealed a simple silver ring, beautiful but not ostentatious, a single diamond catching the autumn light. Take it, Julian said quietly. And if you can't yet, I'll wait, as long as it takes. Kay looked at the ring, then back at Julian's face, open, vulnerable, hopeful. She thought of their journey from transaction to connection, from arrangement to love. She thought of the walls they'd both built, the fears they'd both faced, the growth they'd both achieved, and she knew her answer. I don't need to wait, she said, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. I know what I want now. Julian held his breath, not daring to hope. And what's that? You, Kay said simply. Just you. Not your money, not your power, not what you can give me. Just you, Julian. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. He took the ring from its box with slightly trembling fingers. Michaela Turner, he said, his voice rough with emotion, will you marry me? Not today, not tomorrow, but when we're both ready, when we've built something real together. Kay looked at the man before her, not the billionaire, not the power broker, but Julian, a man who had chosen vulnerability over control, who had risked everything for the chance to love and be loved in return. Yes, she whispered, holding out her hand. When we're ready, Julian slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. Their kiss was gentle at first, then deepening with all the emotion they'd held back for so long, hope and fear, doubt and trust, and beneath it all, a love that had transformed them both. When they finally broke apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Kay Turner, all of you, the strength and the vulnerability, the pride and the compassion, everything you are." "And I love you," Kay replied, "not for what you can give me, but for who you are, who you're becoming." As they sat on that bench beneath the maple tree, the autumn wind sending crimson leaves dancing around them, Kay felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since before her mother died. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. They came from different worlds, carried different scars, faced different challenges. But they would face them together, no longer hiding behind walls of pride or control. The price of silence had been high. But the reward, this chance at real, honest love, was worth every penny. 6 months later, Kay stood in the small kitchen of the apartment she and Julian now shared. It wasn't his penthouse. True to his word, he'd moved into a modest 2-bedroom, in a nice but not extravagant building. Darnell had the 2nd bedroom, though he spent most of his time at college now, thriving in his first semester with a full scholarship. Julian was adapting to his new life with surprising grace. He worked as a consultant, using his business expertise to help struggling companies without the pressure of running his own empire. His grandmother visited often, delighting in teaching Kay family recipes and sharing embarrassing stories about Julian's childhood. They were building something real, day by day, moment by moment. Not perfect, but honest. Not easy, but worth. As Kay prepared dinner, Julian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pressing a kiss to her neck. "Happy anniversary," he murmured. Kay smiled, leaning back against him. 6 months isn't really an anniversary." "It is to me," Julian replied. 6 months since you said yes, since we started over." Kay turned in his arms to face him. "Any regrets?" "About the trust, about—" She gestured around their modest apartment. Julian shook his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not one. For the first time in my life, I know who I am without all the trappings, and I like who I'm becoming." "Me too," Kay said softly, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. The timer on the stove dinged, interrupting them. Julian laughed, releasing her reluctantly. "I'll set the table." As they moved around the kitchen together in comfortable domesticity, Kay glanced at the calendar on the wall. 6 months down, 6 to go before Julian could access his fortune again. But somehow, that didn't seem to matter anymore. They'd found something more valuable than all his billions. Trust, honesty, love without conditions or expectations. The price of her silence had bought them both something priceless, the courage to speak their truths, to be vulnerable, to love, without fear. And that, Kay knew, was a bargain at any price. The end.